Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I decided to make another video. I really wanted to try to wait until my voice was better before filming, but I can't keep waiting, so here we are. So as promised, I wanted to do my top 10 and bottom 10 books, reads of the year. Wrap-ups. Wow, that was nonsense, but you know what I mean. Top 10, bottom 10. This video today is going to be my bottom 10. I think it's good to do the bottom 10 first because then we can like end the year on a happy note. You know? I do feel like a little bit guilty making this video. I feel bad. I feel like my mom's gonna tell me I'm being mean to books and authors, more importantly than the books themselves. For the sake of not being mean, I'm not including any indie authors or like self-published stuff that just feels too much. So these are all traditionally published books that have their own fan base, their own popularity, and I just didn't like them. So that being said, none of these are bad books. Well, none of these are objectively awful. I just didn't like them, and therefore they're in my bottom 10. So if I was gonna rank every book I read this year, these are the ones that come in last, that's all. So coming in at number 10, yeah, so I'm gonna do 10 through 1 being my least favorite read of the year. So coming in at number 10, the least bad of the bad, is Upon a Burning Throne by Asha K. Banker. I already did a semi-review of this in an earlier video, and here's the thing. This book made it into my bottom 10 because I did not enjoy reading it, and it's virtually unreadable to me, but it's not bad. Upon a Burning Throne is a fantasy retelling / translation of an actual Indian mythology, and I love mythology retellings. I think they're very fun, but this one is written in a way, in a style that I'm not used to and that is not my favorite. Upon a Burning Throne is written very matter-of-factly, like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this guy thought this, and this guy thought this. It's unlimited omniscience. We know what every character is thinking, and everything happens very quickly, and it's full of utter nonsense. But most mythologies are, so that's not the problem. It just does not stop. This book is also filled with seemingly meaningless interludes. Again, I know the retellings of stories within this mythology, but they just seem disconnected from the overall plot that's happening. And plot is in quotations because there's no plot. I think when it comes down to it, I'm just disappointed that this wasn't, you know, an amazing epic, and that's on me. That's not on Banker. He does retellings, he does translations, that's what he does. But this was marketed as a fantasy retelling, which it's not really. If you're interested in world mythology and retellings and that sort of thing, I definitely recommend checking this out. It's actually a trilogy, and if you can get past the writing style, which is just difficult for me, then I'd say give it a go. Again, not bad, just not for me. Number 9 is another disappointment. It was The Sword Defiant by Gareth Hanrahan. Oh my gosh, I was so excited for this book. I've been on a sort of talking sword binge this year, and so I just want more and more. And this has an amazing talking sword in it. What's his name? I forget. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The sword itself is incredible. I love it as a character. He's sarcastic and funny and intriguing, and the star of the show, really. But for whatever reason, we just abandoned the sword like halfway through the book, and then he's not in it anymore until much later. What the heck? It was the best part, and then we're like, oh no, he's too threatening. Let's put him in a box under a bed. Bye, sword. I didn't like that. I also found that this book wasn't sure what it wanted to be. This was essentially a Dungeons and Dragons-esque story, but we didn't get to learn much about any of the side characters in the band coming back together situation. We only have Alfric, and then we kind of learn about a couple of the other side characters, and we know nothing about the rest. But all of the side characters sound way more interesting than Alfric. Like, way more interesting. And I want books about them instead of him. His sister is also a main character in the story, and her story was very interesting, but again, felt super disconnected. It felt like it was a different book entirely. She was having some elf magic fever dream that went nowhere. Ultimately, this was like 6 different books in one that never focused on their correct thing and really abandoned the most interesting characters in favor of some kind of not very good ones. Number 8 is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. I loved this book while reading it. I listened to the audiobook actually, and the narration was great. It was a quick read, but on reflection, with hindsight, this was the most forgettable book I have ever read. I forgot to review it for weeks because I just forgot it existed. I almost didn't include it in my wrap-up video for November or whenever I read this. It's a religious possession story set in the 1800s? No, the 1900s. Early 1900s, middle of nowhere, Northwest, what's it called in the US? What are they? Pacific Northwest, that's what they call it. Somewhere up in there, a Christian boys' orphanage is set upon by a demon that, you know, makes the children be bad and evil and violent. There was some awesome gore and like horrific child murdering in this book, which was pretty cool. But other than that, it was just really a really typical demon possession story with nothing really new added to the genre. I don't honestly have much else to say about this book. If you're looking for a wintry horror and you're a fan of paranormal possession stuff, check it out. It's pretty short, but it's just not the best book I've ever read, you know? If you can hear Ryan walking around in the background, he lost his wallet, so he's trying to find it while I film, and I'm not helping because I'm filming. Number 7 is a book that I've talked about to death. I did an entire video review of this book. It's The Builders by Daniel Polanski. I had a hard time deciding if this should be on the list because subjectively, loved it. Incredible. Objectively, bad book. This is so weird. And honestly, in the author's note, Daniel Polanski says that this book was a joke that just took off. I really enjoyed reading it, but it's crazy. It's another getting the band back together, but it's a Western and all the characters are animals. Ridiculously violent. Super gross graphic violence that just like, again, why? But it's animals with guns. If you like Westerns, if you like silly little guys, you can read this. Number 6 is Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. Again, not a bad book, but just disappointing. At the start of the year, I was going through a phase of like Slavic, Scandinavian, Russian, folklore, that sort of thing. And Thistlefoot was on my list, so I was really excited to get it, but I truly just didn't do enough research into this book. It's a Baba Yaga retelling, and I love Baba Yaga, but it's an urban fairy tale. It's not set in the setting I thought it would be. It's modern retelling, which I hate. I hate modern retellings. So this is on me for not liking it. It also came off very YA. I'm not sure what it was, but it read to me like Six of Crows. The main male character in here really, really reminded me of Kaz Brekker. So like, hey, that's gonna make a lot of you want to read this, I bet. But to me, no thank you. Number 5, I think. Yes, number 5. Another book with a huge, huge fan base, and I'm the only one that didn't like it. It's The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. Again, this one's on me, guys. I'm not a romance girly. So one of my coworkers loves this book. It's one of her favorite books of the year, I'm pretty sure, and I get it. It's a very pretty book. The writing style is poetic, lyrical, haunting, but to me it's just not fantasy enough. It's more romance. Like even at the end I just didn't know if it was a fantasy. It's another modern urban thing, so that's why. I will say the writing was beautiful, and that's what made me stick it out, was the prose itself, but the story was extremely boring to me. Bored out of my mind. It's another fairy tale retelling, which I guess just wasn't working for me this year. Number 4 is a book that confused the hell out of me. It's The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hard Castle by Stuart Turton, not to be confused with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Different book. This is a mystery, and I don't read a lot of mystery, but I do read some, and I like a mystery. But this was nonsense. True, actual nonsense. Bad book. I read this as part of a book club, and the consensus was we were so confused and hated it. I don't want to go too much into it because if you read it, I can't give anything away. But what the heck? I'm a fan of a big cast of characters, but this had too many all at once that each didn't have enough going on to be memorable. We've got time jumps, as is insinuated with the blurb. That's not a spoiler. But we have time jumps that are confusing and boring, and there's too many of them. And the key to a good mystery is a good resolution, right? Yeah, this sucked. I don't even care that I'm being mean right now. Mom, don't yell at me. Number 3. I did a whole video review of this one as well. And unfortunately, this was actually given to me as part of a PR package. So I feel a little bad roasting it, but I didn't like it. It's Hospital by Han Song, the English translation. I just want to say before getting into it, this is a beautiful book. Like, I love it visually. I'll link my video review above where you can get all of my thoughts on this, but ultimately it's a horror sci-fi thriller, and I don't agree with any of those terms being used to describe this book. The biggest problem with this book, unfortunately, I think is the translation. And I looked at a lot of other people's reviews and I talked to some people about this book, and that's the general consensus again. Apparently in Chinese this book is a lot better, but the English translation just took out all of the like charm and spark to this book, and it made it very bland and boring and confusing. This is supposed to be a horror commentary on the medical system in China, and it certainly is, but it's just not relayed well to a Western audience. I don't know ultimately whose fault this is. The publisher, the translator, me, the reader, just not having all of the necessary information. But unfortunately, I really didn't like this book. Oh boy, book number 2. So my second least favorite book of the year. I've had a lot of fights about this book with people that I work with. Keandra. It's A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson. All right. Relax. I know, you loved this book. I get it. But here's the thing. It's bad. I'm sorry. A Diary of Blood is a feminist Dracula retelling from the perspective of one of Dracula's wives. What's her name? I already forgot. Constanza. To me, this read very similarly to The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Very pretty book. Very fancy words. But boring. While I was reading this, I really just got the impression that this was a DDLG relationship, but make it vampires. It was a BDSM poly relationship, and then S.T. Gibson was like, oh shoot, I need to make it a fantasy. They're vampires. It's Dracula. If you like romance and you like this, great. But it's not marketed correctly, and that's why I'm angry. She has a new book coming out now, and I was offered an arc of it. I haven't decided if I'm gonna take it yet. I don't think I'm going to. Alrighty, are you ready for my number 1 most hated book of the year? I know I started this list saying, well, I don't hate these books, they're not bad, I just didn't like them. I hated this book, the one that's number 1. I read this all the way back in January, and I still am holding it inside me. Pulling the Wings Off Angels by KJ Parker. First and foremost, I did not know this was a novella when I purchased it. That's on me. I could just check the page count. Let me just rant for a second. This is unrelated to this book list. The prices of novellas are ridiculous. I'm talking specifically to Tor, Nightfire and Tor.com. Stop charging like almost 30 Canadian dollars for an 80-page book. I'm over it. Okay, back to the list. This was described as a madcap adventure brimming with the ethical quandaries and sardonic wit of The Good Place delivered by world fantasy winning author KJ Parker. Was it that? I guess. What this actually was a weird, preachy, self-obsessed theology lecture. It's supposed to be like God versus mobsters versus random guys who are being threatened by the mob to have their body parts hacked off if they don't deliver them an angel. That's like 1% of the story. It's very short. So the actual like action and plot that happens is like 10 pages maybe. The rest is the main character, this clerical student, philosophizing. He's thinking about God. For 130 pages, it's KJ Parker's thoughts on religion. I was also tricked. This is my fault. But on the front, there's a quote that says, as if Deadpool had slipped into the body of the Witcher Geralt. That sounds awesome. But that quote is about a different book. But they put it on the front of this one. And I don't know how to read. Anyways, ultimately I am upset that I spent almost $30 on a very short book that was not about what it was marketed as. I think that's the lesson of my list of bottom 10 books of the year. A lot of them I didn't like because they were marketed a certain way and then ultimately ended up being very different than that. And I don't like when that happens. One of my goals for the new year is to do more research into books before I purchase and read them, and to not trick myself into thinking I'm gonna enjoy romance. I'm never gonna like it. Why do I keep trying? I'm trying to try new things. You're supposed to do that, right? No, stick to what you know you like. That's the lesson today, guys. Don't try new things, ever, in any part of your life. Stay in your lane. I'll be back on New Year's Eve with my top 10 books of the year, which are all gonna be in the same genre. Sorry this video was chaotic, my throat hurts. Before I go, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell icon so you know when I upload new videos. I upload 2 days a week. I love you guys, Happy New Year, goodbye.